Okay, we're going to continue with another segment because I don't have any phone calls yet. Okay, let's see. This one here. Let me. Yeah, I still have it zoomed in. Okay. I don't know. It looks like a rework after impact. Rework the tip after a catastrophic impact. Yeah, it's nice and sharp. Why it was had some percussion on the side there. I don't know why they would do that. It's got an interesting beveling. You know, it's hit on that side and hit on this side maybe. No, that's the impact fracture. Yeah, I don't know. Someone was messing with this. Maybe they constricted it so they could hang it on a lanyard or a necklace. And just what they needed was just the tip for whatever they were doing. Very cute at lateral dart point because I think the neck is too wide for arrow point. This is a hafted arrow point. Yeah, the neck is way too wide for an arrow point, in my view. Now this is I made these. These are not authentic artifacts. These things, these are just samples that I like to make so that I can refer back to them if I need an idea. So even though it may look the same size or appropriate for an arrow, the neck width is way too wide. Yeah, arrow points are delicate and the necks are narrow. These are both made by me. They're not the artifacts. I have arrow points in this collection, but I don't have them readily available, so I just grabbed the first two that I have available that I made. Here's another style here with just a triangle. Very different from this stem, okay? Just to illustrate. Can you haft this to an arrow? Will it work? Yes, it will work. Any of these basically will work on an arrow, even this one here. Even though the arrow tip diameter might be small, you can still haft it. It still works. But for our purposes, when we look at these, especially when we don't know the depth that these were found, we go by the things like neck width, thickness, to determine if it's a lateral dart point or not. It would be much better mounted on a thick piece of wood like this rather than a thin one. Right. Okay. A piece of a blade, and then we don't know what the distal or proximal ends are. It's just a midsection, but it's useful in knowing how they developed their edges and how they looked. Most of them are all jaggedy. Let's see. Let me see if I can zoom in, because these to me looks like it doesn't cut very well, but who knows? Maybe it does. I wouldn't use that edge for cutting meat. If I were to develop the edge, I would just nap one side and make a little bevel and a continuous edge and as straight as I could to cut meat. But if it's a projectile and all you need to do is widen the wound, it doesn't need to be extra specially sharp, right? It just needs to widen the wound in that fraction of a second that it passes the hide or whatever. It just cuts. Whatever is sharp on here will add to the cutting, and it'll penetrate and it'll cause a wider wound. It's not essential that the whole thing be perfect. Okay. In my view, other people might say, no, it's not humane. It's not humane to shoot an animal with a dull point. I agree, it's not humane, but when you're dealing with stone, it's very difficult to create a perfect edge. You're going to create one that will cut very effectively, but rarely will it look perfect. Okay, so this is just a reworked point of some sort. I do not know. Why do I say reworked? Because it's tiny. It looks like it's got step fracturing from someone that's just quickly trying to resharpen it and not be fancy about it. Just end up to put another edge on it to do whatever they were going to do. Same with this one, just a reworked point. It's snapped somehow. This does look like the tip because it's very pointy. Hafting it like this with a pointy end is possible, right? It is possible, but I wouldn't do it. I'd prefer a more rounded base personally, although it was done the other way with a pointed base in many cases, so you never know. Lots of beveled stem edges, beveled, yeah, in one direction. Chip downward, flip it, chip downward. It does look like pressure developed this one, not percussion, but I don't know. I mean, you can get pretty accurate with percussion if you're good enough. It could be completely percussion resharpened, completely percussion made with no pressure at all. It's possible that this never saw a pressure flaker in its life. So that's something to think about. Some of you can see if there's pressure flakes on there or not. I really can't tell too much between pressure and accurate or light percussion. Very nice. It looks like the point of something. This edge is not as jaggedy as the other edge that I was looking at earlier. See how jaggedy this is here in this one and compared to this one. Now this one down below could be more worn than the one up above. I wish I could tell you that's what it looks like after using it as a saw, but I don't know for sure. Usually when I use something as a saw, it just gets gummed up. And I take the gummed up stuff out of it, and it looks pretty much the same than before I started sawing. All right. So I don't know what would cause such a damage like this. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, a lot of sawing, I guess, would cause that kind of damage. Just a lot of sawing with it. All right, nice big stem, nice impact damage. It's alternately beveled, so it's not like an Andice stem, because you don't see alternate beveling on an Andice stem. This looks like some pressure work to alternately bevel this one. Nice long stem, so that's a very firm haft. You would need, a pretty thick piece of wood to haft it into. Thicker than this probably. Yeah, and wider. It's a heavy duty spear. Is it going to be handheld, do you think? Do I think it would be a handheld spear with the handheld impact damage? It's possible, yes. You can develop the same amount of kinetic energy with a handheld spear as you can with a thrown one. especially if you're running toward the target and then you thrust. The weight of you and the spear behind the point increases the kinetic energy to the same amount as some of the slower traveling atlatl darts. The atlatl dart doesn't have as much mass behind the point, but the velocity increases the kinetic energy. The lack of velocity for a handheld is compensated by larger mass behind the point. So they can develop the same kinetic energy. And in physics, you get the same kinetic energy acting on the tip, it produces the same result. Okay, it's just physics. So yes, you can get impact fractures as long as the kinetic energy is the same. You can get identical impact fractures. Okay. That's just physics. Now, in real life, there are variations. There are things to consider. There are other little persnickety little details that could get in the way. But that's why we experiment, to see what those little persnickety details could be. All right. There'll be subtle differences in the impact fractures. There may be subtle differences in the basal damage from the different types of hafting. Those little things. It's just a normal, to me, this is just a normal little Pedernales type point. I don't see any impact fractures. Well, yeah, I guess there's, yeah, that probably is. Yeah, I need to do more experiments on impact fractures so that I don't say everything's an impact fracture. It's got to be some other way you could break that like that. It's a mystery. It's a mysterious mystery. What this is. This is the type of stone that I heat treat because it's miserable stone. It's like a quartzite almost. Yeah, and quartzite does improve with heat in many cases. And that's a cute little point. Probably impact damage. Slightly curved blade. Looks like it's been resharpened. But you never know. It could be made just like that. Big percussion flakes. Still visible. So not too much fuss about pressure flaking after. Although the stem looks like it's pressure flaked a little bit to shape it around the edges. No grinding. It is kind of sharp though. Yeah. Nice. And we got a bunch of things like this, little points. I don't think I've seen a stem that long on a point this big. So it's probably the point. Yeah, I gotta stop doing that. Let me see. I cannot be dropping those, so I'm gonna put a cloth over the, oops. Put a cloth over all these down here. So as I'm talking, I can be sneaking these underneath the cloth. Okay. Nice little side notch or corner notch point. Obviously some severe damage, probably impact. Nice edge development on this one, nice and thin. If we compare it to our comparison piece, you can see differences in the edge. Why aren't they all like this? Well, obviously, they're used. Some of them are used for cutting or whatever. Those of you with good eyes can probably get more from this than I'm getting from it. I just think this was used less than this one. That's why it's sharper and thinner on the edge. But who knows? This might be very close to close to how it looked like when it was finished. Okay, I don't know. Heat damage on something. Nice little point. Nice little fat point. Nice little tip and nice little fat point. Heat damage. Yeah, that's a shame. Okay. Stupid fires causing all this heat damage. Oh, that's a nice long barb. Looks like a relatively short piece. I can't tell if that was broken in manufacture or broken after it was completed. Ooh, a nice little flake. It is worked around the edges, so it could be a utilized flake for something around the camp. Yeah. Worked edges. Obvious attempt to shape and sharpen, or maybe resharpen the edges. Okay. Who knows what they use those for? It's just called a scraper in general. Nice little stem. Percussion stem. Yeah. I would say that's a percussion stem, kind of a Nolan looking piece. Same type of fracture on one of the other ones, so you can't really tell if it's impact or broken in manufacture. Impact damage maybe, but broken in manufacture maybe. All kinds of stuff can lead to a fracture like this, even just dropping it. Heat damage on this one after the fact, but they resharpened it to a point. Right? Why would you use a point like this? Or what would you use it on? Because it looks like, well, that's a calcium deposit. I don't know if that was that's not part of the original stone, I don't think. It just so happens to be a calcium deposit on the very tip. What would you use it for? Just scoring something. It's not really good for cutting, but it is good for scoring. So if you're trying to incise or engrave something, you can use a tip like that. A bunch of damaged goods here. Heat damage. Now, you might think, well, isn't heat treating supposed to be beneficial to stone? Why does it damage it? When it gets too hot, it'll damage it. Or if it's a type of stone that doesn't react well to heat, it'll damage it. Not all stones will be benefited from heat. Many stones will, but you have to keep the range pretty tight and not go too hot in most cases. This looks like a finished point with damage. Although that concrete is terrible. Maybe it's broken in manufacture. But they could have finished it out with a concrete tip. But when I encounter something like this for myself, I tend to break it right where the concrete is, so it's probably I would say broken in manufacture. Okay. It's a reworked piece, I think. Yeah. You can see that it broke right across the neck, and the barbs snapped off too, so. You can see there were some barbs on that. Now, what would be that size with little barbs? Maybe an Ensor type. Maybe. Yeah. Broken piece. A little bit of a twist to it. I can't tell if that's broken in manufacture or not. The edge looks like it has some wear on it, or it's just a preliminary edge to get it set up for more flaking, and it's just broken in manufacture. Nice little bitty, that little dart point, because of the neck width. Otherwise, it's the same size as an arrow point. Now, why would you have a curve in it? Why would you leave it curved? Well, with this size, it doesn't matter too much. With this size, with a bigger one, it's going to matter more. The larger it is, the more that curve is going to be a problem. But with small ones, there's not much of a problem with the curve. Now, you can hang this around your neck as a pendant with the curve, the convex side toward your skin. That way, that little point doesn't poke. Could be a pendant. Just something that's a Flintknapper made for decoration. Okay. Yep, heat damage. Oh god, am I getting bored with these? A little bit. Too many mysteries. Nothing really pops out as interesting. I could definitively say what it is. These are all just highly damaged goods. I suppose if you look long enough at something, you can invent what happened. Yeah, snap right across the neck. Snap your neck. Isn't there a saying or a song that has that? Anyway. Heat damage. Most of you guys that have gone through the rest of these artifact videos, you know what heat damage looks like now. I don't even need to say. Yep. Resharpen little tip. Nice little tips. Ooh, impact. Looks like. Alright, we got a little bit left, and then I'm going to call it for the night. Alright. Here we go. Ooh, now that one's interesting. Because I can't tell. I think it's probably a part of a Montel. You know, one of the lobes from a Montel. Okay, this is the edge of the Montel. That used to be the barb, and this is one of the lobes of the stem, and this is the center notch. It's a Montel. Yepper. Another Montel. Same thing. Except I don't know what that is. Broken in manufacture. I don't know what would do that other than a manufacturing error. Two little Montels. Yeah, because you can see this edge. Let's see if I can describe this. If you put these two little lobes together, you can see that this top edge goes in toward the tip, but the other one is more wide. It's going out further, which tells me that the top one is more refined than the bottom one. The bottom one still has work to do on the edge. So whereas this could be a completed point, this one looks like one broken in manufacture. And the edge development isn't as good. It's not as straight. It still has big deltas on it. So I would say this one broken in manufacture, both because of this type of break and the way it looks compared to something that looks more finished. Okay. That's a utilized piece. That's an impact fracture there, but it looks like it might have been utilized after the fact. Maybe, I don't know. That was my first impression. Maybe not. This little broken off barb. Heat damage and various other damages. This looks like a little Frio base, half of one. Cute little stemmed point. This one probably a Frio also. Lots of damage. Maybe even a Martindale looking thing. Yeah, maybe Martindale. And a little stemmed point. I don't know what these are called. Okay, that's it for today.